4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're ready to go. Well, let me ask you, Mrs. Currier, why don't you give me your full name and the year you were born?
I'm Catherine Ellis Currier, and I was born in May in 1926.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And were you born here in Sandwich?
I was born in Sandwich. I was a home birth at the time.
A home birth?
Home birth.
Oh, and how many people and how many children in the family?
I had five other siblings, of which I am the only remaining. Yeah.
And I assume that all home birth as well for those?
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
And was that the standard situation back in the 1920s?
Yes, it really was. Yes. Yeah. Some were born in hospitals, but I think most of us were born at home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what street were you on back when you first?
I lived on Cross Street at the time. When I was born on Cross Street.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And did you ever live down on Church Street?
Excuse me, I said that wrong. I'm sorry. I was born on Church Street.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born on Church Street. Yeah.
And that's where the whole family was. What was it like in Church Street back there in the 1920s and 30s? How many members of your family and how many numbers of rooms in your house?
Well, we were families in those days. We stayed together. We didn't go around much because we weren't allowed to probably leave the neighborhood as much as they do now. And we just stayed home and we were interactive with each other, played cards and games and just talked. And of course we had the radio. And so it was a wonderful time actually, because we really enjoyed each other a lot. And we grew up to be a very close family.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And did you all share bedrooms?
Yes, so there was 4 bedrooms in the house.
Oh.
Yeah, and I just shared with my sister. I had 1 sister and 4 brothers.
And did you get down to the Sandwich Beach there, going across the boardwalk?
Yes, we did. We walked through someone's yard constantly. That's how we went everywhere we went. We always went through someone's yard, and nobody ever cared about that then. And we would go down to Canary Street, and there was a path at the end of Canary Street, and we would walk through that path to the boardwalk. And that's how we went to the beach.
And did everyone from that Church Street and State Street and Canary Street, do you all know each other back then?
Yes, we sure did. Yes, there weren't a lot of children then at that time. There weren't too many, and where I was on the corner, there was only another family my age with two children. Yeah, and then there were older boys, like that was there, but I had nothing to do with them.
Okay.
And
Now those are some difficult times, I imagine. Economically, we're talking about your growing up, really during the Depression years. What did your father do during that period of time for work?
my father always had his own business. Whatever he did, he worked for himself. Years ago, he had 2 stores in Sandwich, 2 grocery stores. And then he had a taxi business, and he had the bus. And as far as finances are concerned, my folks never talked in front of us about any finances. We had no idea what my father ever made or anything. They never talked in front of their children. We had what we needed. We didn't have a lot, but we had what we needed. And,
did you feel like it was a depression and things
I don't.
were difficult?
People say to me, and I said, I have no idea, because I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it, no.
Well, your father was a busy man.
He was. He did everything and anything he could do to take care of his family. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the stores, if you can remember.
I don't remember
any of
those.
that.
Those were years ago, before I was born.
Okay. But did you hear stories
I heard
from
about
him?
them. Yes, I heard about them from my older brothers, you know.
What did they tell you about them? I'd be interested in knowing where they were and what they sold.
One store was on the corner of Harbor Street and State Street, and that store is in the Thornton Burgess cookbook, a picture of that store. It was a brick building, which has since been torn down, and it was all kind of provisions. And he even had an ad in that he had pastries. And then the second store was on Jarvis Street, just over the railroad tracks. There were about 4 buildings up. There was started to be the businesses before the traffic lights now.
Mm-hmm.
And my father had a store there. And my brothers used to tell me that if my father went to Boston on the train to get produce, and they always talked about, which impressed me, was that he had a lamp that ripened the bananas, and apparently he'd buy hands of bananas, and he would bring them back, and they would put them on this lamp, and they would ripen the bananas. And but he did go to he would get the produce from the train, yeah,
Wow.
and go into Boston and get the produce. And
Now we're doing the other thing. Now
yeah.
we're growing everything locally and
right,
trying to produce it and eat it locally.
That's right.
Now, did you operate both of the stores at the same time, or did one follow the other?
No, one followed the other. The other store on Jarvis Street was much later, I believe, yeah. Yeah.
Now, you talked about the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And then you and I have talked a little bit about that bus, and I know we're talking about the very first sandwich bus.
That's right.
So what can you tell me about that and your family stories about the bus? And where, go ahead.
Well, I know he, he had to go before the school committee, and then he got the contract to have the bus, and the bus only went to East Sandwich, and so anyone from Sandwich, anywhere in Sandwich, never rode on that bus, and it just went all through East Sandwich, and I think he had the contract for I think 4 or 5 years, yeah, and that's all I remember that much, except that we thought it was horrible that we couldn't ride the bus. We had to walk to school, and he could go and bring someone else to school on the bus, yeah. So.
Did he own the bus, or did the town?
He owned the bus. He owned the bus. I think at the time there was a Rio dealership in Sandwich, and I think he bought the bus through that man that had the dealership for the Rios, and that's where he purchased the bus. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that bus little mini bus is still with us today, isn't it?
That's right. My sister-in-law had it totally restored. Yeah, the parts, lots of the parts were in the garage where my father, in his home where he was born, on that property. And then my brother bought that property, and the bus was still in the garage. Yeah, and so they took it out and kept as much as they could, and then had it completely restored. Yeah.
And do we see that today? And
we see it in the parades today. Mm-hmm. And that's through, my brother always wanted to do that. That was his life's dream, but unfortunately he didn't live to see it. But his wife fulfilled his dream, which we're very proud of.
What a great story.
It's a great story. It really is, yeah.
And that operated from 1924 to 1935, is that right?
Right, I think that's right, yes, yeah. I did copy that down, yeah.
Wow.
24 to...
So you were the child living in the house that couldn't get on the bus, but your father drove the bus.
That's
so you
right.
walked to school. Now you walked over to what school, and tell me about that.
The Wing School, the original Henry T. Wing School, which is the center of that school that's there today. They've added on to that, but we were in the brick part of that building. You know, that was the whole school at that point in time. There wasn't any kindergarten. It was just grade 1 through 12. Yeah.
And how many classmates did you have?
I had 12. 12 of us graduated together. We had more as freshmen. We went into the freshman class, and then some of the boys left school for obvious reasons to help their families. And but that was just 12 of us graduated together, just 4 boys. The rest were the girls.
And did you all stay together as one class from the first grade all the way through high school?
Yes, we did. Some of us did. We went through the whole 12 together, right? We had quite a sizable freshman class, but then we the boys, some of them left, had to leave, and some moved away. But the 12 of us stayed together at the end.
Well, with all of those, just 12 of you together for all those years,
yeah.
you must have developed, did you develop good friendships?
Oh, we did. The girls, we did, yeah. And three of us get together, well, sometimes once a week, but two girls, another girl and myself are very friendly. We're together quite often. And one of my friends is in the nursing home. So there are actually 5 girls remaining and no boys.
Wow. Now, times were different then, and I'm trying to visualize you're walking from Church Street all the way up there. Tell me how that went. Were there crossing guards? How did you get to school? Where did you walk? How is it different then than it is now?
I just walked up Church Street and up to Jarvis and on to Main and up to School Street and on Water Street and to the school. And then for many years I walked with my sister. I always said I ran with my sister because she took a larger stride than I did. And I would run and she wouldn't wait for me if I couldn't keep up. So we always had to, regardless of the weather, we had to walk. Yeah.
And were there crossing guards on Route
No,
6A?
absolutely not, no. But there wasn't the traffic that there is now. We were very safe in those days.
Let me see. So you were a teenager during World War II in those difficult times.
Yes.
Tell me about what your recollections from that early 1940s period during World War II in Sandwich.
I was in high school, and though many boys were drafted, and a lot of them joined so they wouldn't be drafted. But we just carried on our life as we normally would, you know. We were always busy, but one thing we did do, there was a civil defense in Sandwich, and another girl and myself, we used to sit in the library at night. We'd do our tour or whatever they gave us, to sit in the library where we had it was all black down there, it was blackout. I don't know what we would have done if anything really had happened, but anyway, we did our tour for community effort during the war, and we would stay in the library. We did that, I think, once a week probably, yeah. And
your function was
everybody
to
pulled the
alert
curtains
the
down
town
and
if
if
something
something
bad
happened.
happened?
I believe so. And because everyone pulled their shades down at night, and and kept it dark, So it was a somber time because everybody was worried about their boys that were in the service.
Now, I had read that there were 201 men from Sandwich that served in World War II. So there must have been, talk to me about the absence of men. Was it noticeable that your classmates and your father's colleagues were all not here?
Yes, yeah. My brothers all served in the service, and we noticed it in our families that they weren't home, and some of them were overseas and in danger, and not my family was not, but and everybody, they were worried about them, and looking forward for them to come home.
And did you tell me about the post office in those days, about being the social center of town? Just elaborate on that.
The post office was a very social place when I was very young at the time, but my sister loved to go to the post office, and my parents would allow her to go. The post office was open for the last mail at night. At 6 o'clock, the last mail came in, and everyone would get together. It was a social event, and especially for some of the younger people, because they would meet their friends there. Because other than that, they probably weren't allowed to go out, and so that was a chance for them to get out. And they would stay outside the post office and socialize until the mail was sorted. And then at first they could go inside, but it got to be a little bit noisy and crowded, I guess. So they locked the door, and everybody had to wait in the street. And then after the mail was sorted, they opened the doors and everyone went in and collected their mail, and then everybody went home. But it was something everyone, they looked forward to. My family, they looked forward to it at night, and other young people did too.
And where was the post office located at that
It
time?
was in the Novelty Block, which is on Jarvis Street right now. It's in apartment houses now, but it was on the end of that block. Yeah.
And what else was in that building back in the
There
1940s?
was the post office, and then there was a beauty shop and a barber shop, and then there was a First National, which after it went out of business, and Mr. Hoy, who ran the First National, was the manager. He took it over as a private store. And then on the other end was the drugstore, Harry Pratt's drugstore. Yeah.
And was the Russell's Corner operating
And
also?
then Mr. Russell always had a store down on the corner. Yes, he did. Mm-hmm.
Now, presently, Beth's Tea Shop exists, but that building has been there a long time.
Yes.
It at one time was a USO, United Service Organization
That's correct.
building.
Yeah.
Tell me about the USO days from what you remember on Jarvis Street.
Well, the USO, I was in high school, and they used to have different ladies volunteered to open it for the servicemen, the Coast Guard, especially the Coast Guard in Sandwich used to come there. And they had a pool table downstairs, and they could play pool downstairs. And then upstairs they just would read, and then on some nights they would have a dance there, and we would go. Since we were in high school, that was a great thing, something for us to do. So we would go to the dances at the USO, and we were well chaperoned. And
You were one of the girls?
one of the girls, yes, we went, and some of them older than myself, but we were all school age, you know. And some of them met their spouses there too. And then after that closed, we also, during the war, we used to go to dances at Camp Edwards. And we saw some of the big bands over there. And these same ladies that did the USO, they have a bus, and we would go on a bus. And they'd bus us to the dance hall at Otis, and then, you know, chaperone us very tightly, and then we would come home. Yeah. And again, some of them in the Army, met their husbands there, their future husbands. Yeah.
So that must have been a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. We had a good time, and we saw some wonderful music. We saw some big bands, you know, and it was a thrill for us to go. And so it was nice.
I bet. Now, excuse me. A lot of the girls met their future husbands that way, and how about yourself? How did you meet your husband?
My husband was a local boy, and I just met him through a friend that was a friend of mine. She was we went to school together. She was older than I, but I met him after high school, after I was out of school. And he had gone in the Navy. His dad was a local doctor here, and he had gone in the Navy, and he had come home from the Navy. And actually, we had gone to a wedding of one of his friends in his high school class, and we actually met at the wedding to know each other. We just knew of each other at the time. So then we started to go together then.
And what was your husband's name?
Richard Currier. Yeah.
And his father was a doctor in town? Can
That's
you remember
right.
anything about that? Where was the doctor's office?
No, I remember the doctor, but he went into the Navy during the war, and he was a medical doctor in the Navy during the war, and they lived on Main Street in Sandwich, but he had his office next to the Brown Jug on Main Street. That office is still there, but it's a gift shop now.
Okay.
But he took over a practice for a Dr. Fonce, who was leaving in town, or I think he was leaving. I'm not sure why. And he took over Dr. Fonce's practice, and then when the war came, he went into the service.
Okay.
He went into the service before that, actually. Yeah.
And that
But he was
office
in
is
the
now-
war, and he was injured in Pearl Harbor. Yeah.
Now, let's go back to your teenage years, I think. And were you active in your local church?
Yes, I was. Yeah, the church was very active in those days.
What church was that?
The Corpus Christi. Yeah, they had whist parties every week, and my aunt was one of the ladies that ran the whist party with another friend of hers, and I used to go. Not that I wanted to go, but I was told to go, and I used to punch for the ladies that played whist, and believe me, they were serious. And I didn't really want to go, but my mother said I must, so I did. But I used to do that when I was younger, you know. And then after that, I was a member of the guild, and I did many functions for them.
Well,
The church was very active in those days. Years ago, I was trying to remember why, but they used to have floats and things. I can remember once being on a float, and I was very young, but I've seen pictures of it. And there was a lady that was up on the corner of Jarvis Street, where the gift shop is now, on the left-hand side, and she had a hat shop over the top of the store. And this is what I was told, and I remember this. And they made this beautiful float. I've often wondered, I did see a picture of it once, and I always wanted to get another picture, but I never could find out where that picture went. But it was a float, and all the little children in the church were on the float. And I do know they used to have a lot of, they had parades. Sandwich was a very festive town years ago. They had a lot of functions going. Yeah.
and do you remember how many people were living in Sandwich back in the 1940s?
I don't know. We used to say 1,900 for years. That's the figure my father always said.